Now to another big story we're following. The Supreme Court delivering a seismic victory for gun owners and the Second Amendment. Liberal leaders going ballistic over a ruling that is set to rock blue states from coast to coast. The nation's highest court tossing out New York State's restrictive regulations on concealed carry permits and saying Americans have a legal right to carry firearms in public for self-defense. It basically means millions of people will no longer have to jump through so many hoops if they want to protect themselves. And the bombshell ruling could spread to other blue states like California. The White House and New York leaders furious and lashing out.
Today, the Supreme Court is sending us backwards in our efforts to protect families and prevent gun violence. Shocking. Absolutely shocking. And I'm sorry this dark day has come.
This decision has made every single one of us less safe from gun violence. And we cannot allow New York to become the wild, wild west.
We, the president, myself, many of us are deeply concerned and troubled by the Supreme Court's ruling today. It, I believe, defies common sense and the Constitution.
The fact that the court is coming down with this decision feels tone deaf, and I worry that it undermines the legitimacy of the court.
I am disappointed in the Supreme Court gun decision. I think it's a bad decision. I think it's not reasoned accurately, but I'm disappointed.
And the ladies of The View are taking their outrage to a whole new level.
I don't even have the words. It seems stupid. No, it's worse than that. It's worse than that. It's not even stupid. It is. It's such a middle finger to New York.
Oh,
Judge, what do you think the chances are that Whoopi Goldberg actually read any of the opinion?
You know what? I'd probably wager my house on that one. I really would. I got to tell you, this decision by the United States Supreme Court is a full-throated defense of the Second Amendment. And the Supreme Court is basically saying this is a constitutional Second Amendment that is explicit. For all of those who are concerned about Roe and they're trying to work it in implicit and kind of it's drawn in and interpreted, this is explicit, where they basically say, you, New York State, you cannot add additional requirements. If someone wants a handgun or a revolver, they come and they get permission for that. You give them that permission. You cannot then say to them, by the way, if you want to carry this gun, then you're going to have to show a special need. And the special need to them is some circumstance where you in particular are subjected to some kind of crime or offense. And the Supreme Court said, no, there is no second test. There is only the first test. 43 states require you to get a license to carry a gun. And they said, that's fine. But you don't go to level 2 and say, and now if you want to carry it, you've got to prove that X, Y, and Z. And the two guys who brought this appeal were guys who were experienced in carrying guns and using guns. One lived in a neighborhood where there were a lot of robberies. And the Supreme Court came down, and I got to tell you, Justice Thomas was like, it wasn't having any of it. He says there is nothing in the Second Amendment that draws a home public distinction with respect to the right to bear arms. And what I think is incredible is in terms of New York, they're saying, and this is a quote from the decision, the respondents attempt to characterize New York's proper cause requirement, that means you have to show more reason to have a gun, as a sensitive place lacks total merit because there is no historical basis for New York to effectively declare the island of Manhattan a sensitive place simply because it's crowded and protected generally by the New York City Police Department. So that's the answer to Mayor Eric Adams, who's so outraged. I want to know why all these liberals are not outraged by the criminals carrying the illegal guns. And don't tell me that they are, because they're not. They're letting them out of jail to hit the streets again and victimize the rest of us. And I want to read one more quote from this decision. They say that there is in the United States an enduring American tradition that permits a public carry. So don't even question it.
Yeah, Judge makes the point that you don't really hear Kamala Harris or other Democrats talk a lot about inner city shootings. They really don't ever talk about it until today. Now they're extremely concerned about it, Dana.
And she said that it doesn't pass the common sense test, and then she added, or the Constitution. But actually, you just had 6 justices say that it does. And I think the other thing that's happening is that people who didn't read the opinion and gave hot takes, and there were so many hot takes. It was like 150 degrees outside today. There were so many. They weren't looking at what the narrow question was of this. It didn't say that everybody now all of a sudden you're going to be getting a handgun like you were COVID tests. That's not happening. It was very specific. It was very narrow. And I'll tell you, the gun control advocates, they should never have pursued this.
Yeah.
And that was from years ago. I remember learning that they could lose in this case. And it takes a long time to get to the Supreme Court. And now you have this. But I couldn't believe Mayor Adams said that we won't have any sleep. Why are they so afraid of law-abiding people? These are people who've already, as the judge just laid out, you pass the background check, you pass the test in order to have your own weapon. The only thing is are you allowed to take it with you? Yeah. That's the only question. They are law-abiding people, and there will be a lot more to say on this. There's some great commentary. If you want to read something that will help you really understand it, Charles Cook over at National Review has a great piece.
A lot of people, Greg, don't understand how difficult it is to get a handgun here in New York City.
I have to say, I mean, I've going through the process, and it was a pain in the neck. It still is, but a lot of it had to do with the COVID stuff. Everything kind of shut down, so it's not entirely just the red tape. But I had to jump through a lot of hoops. You know, when Mayor Adams says it's going to be a wild, wild west, I can't imagine it getting worse than it is now, right? I mean, it's like we got, you know, what you said. It's like they're not that upset about the lawbreakers. They're more worried about the law-abiding people. And I think about mass shooters. I don't believe, and someone can correct me later, I won't listen, but I don't believe anybody with a concealed carry permit ever committed a mass shooting. And so I think the ban itself had no role in like preventing these things, right? But you could argue that a concealed carry or of that could help stop a mass shooting because it creates uncertainty among the suspects. That's why the Aurora shooter skipped a few movie theaters, because he knew that there were guns there. And also we know that just the science of it, the number of people dying in a mass shooting is wholly dependent on the time it takes for a gun to get there. Right. And given the fact that at the last shooting in Texas, that the police had the guns and didn't do it, and boy, does that argue for this. Because if there had been a person, and this is not to condemn the police, but because there's the fog of war aspect going on. But in this fog of war, there might be somebody within that war, in that room, that might have stopped it, as opposed to the people out there. And then last word, just on Hochul, is that her name? I always Hochul. Hochul? She's a yokel. She's as sharp as a Frisbee. She's done nothing to curb this epidemic of crime in this state. So she has no right to come and complain when the public embraces self-protection as a right. The fact is, you let out repeat offenders, you defund, you reduce penalties for gun crime. Forgive me if I'm going to turn my house into an armed fortress.
You're here.
I differ slightly. So let me say this. I think the court, a 6-3 decision, I remind you, Judge, you know as well, Roe v. Wade's a 7-2 decision, so the numbers around the majority are relevant, but if we're going to talk about it, we should talk about all of it. 2, I asked myself a fundamental question, Judge, and you presided and you prosecuted people, and I would ask everyone around the table, because we've talked about crime, does you feel safer today knowing that people will be able to take their guns outside their homes, people who we hope are sane? I hope everyone who is out just trying to protect him or herself. But I'd tell you, I'm not sure I feel safer, and I would pose the question to the table. 2, I wonder where police officers and law enforcement are going to come down on this. When I was in Congress, law enforcement organizations didn't mind common sense restrictions because they were concerned about criminals and others. And understand, someone who's not a criminal today who takes a gun and uses it for criminal purposes becomes a criminal right after that. So I hear all of the excitement, and I'm not here to pour water on it, but I am here to just offer a couple of questions. Whatever we think about Adams and whatever we think about the police chief and whatever we think about Hochul, I believe they're trying to make the city safer. Are they doing everything they should, Judge? I would agree. You and I would agree on this. They're not. There are more things they should be doing. But just because we don't like some of the things they're not doing on 2 and 3 other steps doesn't mean that we should gleefully say that this is the right thing for the city. I hope I'm wrong. And if I'm wrong, I'll be the first to say, God dang it, we should have armed everybody in the city 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago when I moved here. But I'm just not convinced that that's where we're going to end up. And again, I hope I'm wrong.
The answer to your first question is, the question being, do I feel safer? That's not the test.
Right.
I just ask if you felt, we talk a lot on this set about issues that impact the issues. So I'm just asking, one of the reasons that I read what the Justice Thomas said. He talked about
incredible.
He said that one of the plaintiffs said, like, I want to carry this gun. I live in a neighborhood. I have a neighborhood where there's some crime going. So this guy wanted to protect himself. And the question I ask again, based on that, and because that's an important element to this case, is do we feel safer? And again, I don't know right now. I don't, and I hope I'm proven wrong. And if I'm proven wrong, I'll come right back around this table and say, you guys, you were exactly right.
But it's not a popularity contest when something is guaranteed by the Constitution. You see, it's not whether or not we agree.
Well, and Heller, Scalia didn't say, and Heller, he didn't say it was absolute.
And
even the concurring opinions by Mr. Kavanaugh
and Chief Justice, they support Heller and McDonald, and I don't want to get into the.
Can I just point out one thing?
Yes,
something happened in this show for the first time in the history of all cable television.
What's that?
You had a panelist saying, I don't know the answer. So you have to give points for Harold for saying that, because you never hear that.
Can I add one other
on
thing?
any show.
I want to add one other thing.
Hopefully she listened. Exactly.
Arguments that you're reading today from people who are upset about this decision. Just watch until the Dobbs decision is announced, and they will be making the exact opposite case to try to make their case there, and that won't make sense.
Ooh.
All right.
And that is not an explicit right.
Exactly.
Precisely.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.